The United Nations Security Council has rejected a U.S. drafted resolution to extend an arms embargo on Iran. Russia and China voted against the move, while Britain, France, Germany, and 8 other Security Council members abstained. U.S. and the Dominican Republic were the only countries to vote for the draft resolution. The U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo expressed his anger at the vote result, saying the Security Council rejected a reasonable resolution. Meanwhile, Russia has proposed a summit of world leaders to avoid confrontation over a U.S. threat to trigger a return of UN sanctions against Tehran. The arms embargo on Iran is to expire in October under the 2015 nuclear deal known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA. Joining us out of Ontario, Canada for more on the story is Jason Unruhe, political commentator. Hello, Jason. Hope you're doing well and safe, and good to have you back on Press TV. Now, the U.S., we know, tried its dandiest to get this thing pushed through. What happened?
Well, basically, it's a situation where I think a lot of the countries that are involved in the UN Security Council are tired of the actions and the antics of the United States. It's a very the word actually fails me at the moment, that the United States would want to extend something that has to do with the JCPOA, yet they have already clearly abandoned the agreement altogether. I think that considering that the vote was only 2 for and 2 against, while a number of others abstained from voting, shows that they didn't have particularly strong feelings about keeping this on Iran, but they also were not in support of the U.S.'s actions concerning everything that they've done with the JCPOA, attempting to sabotage it. So I think that it very much sends the message that perhaps many of those on the UN Security Council are tired of dealing with the whole situation and want some kind of return to normalcy. They want to reject the U.S., but they also don't want to make themselves a target by specifically voting against them. I mean, that's very much the pattern of, or very much what happens when when a country refuses to vote on something. They're specifically not trying to take a side, which is usually very much a political maneuver. I think they're tired of dealing with the situation, but they're not wholly willing to stand up to the United States, because given this presidency of Donald Trump, they have a particular pattern of punishing anyone who happens to disagree with them with tariffs on their goods.
And Jason, in the first place, why do you think the U.S. was so hell-bent on getting this extension pushed through?
Well, I think it's very much a situation where the United States has been attempting to sabotage Iran to cause the kind of regime change strategy that they're most known for inside the Middle East. One of those has been to harm every sector of the economy possible, and one of those being the military. As we saw previously this year, when Soleimani was murdered, Iran demonstrated the capacity to strike back at the United States and then did not receive any retaliation for doing so. So Iran has showed that it's not going to back down. I think the main thing here in this particular situation is to deliberately undermine Iran's military technical capabilities. Some commentators have noted that if this ban were to be released, they feel that probably Iran would buy MiG-31 jets from Russia. Now, whether or not Russia would be willing to carry out such a sale, or if Iran is even interested in making such a purchase, that definitely remains to be seen. But these are what they're worried about. They're worried about any potential ability of Iran to buff up their military forces, obtain new fighter jets, new military technology. I mean, Iran has certainly put out a tremendous effort to bolster their technology domestically, but their manufacturing capability remains severely limited due to the sanctions on the country. So I think that's basically what the United States fears. They fear Iran having a specific military capability of defending itself, especially in light of the recent actions of Israel interfering inside of Syria and making all kinds of threats against Iran in that whole particular situation itself.
And Jason, I mean, if you want Iran not to buy new weapons? Why are you selling billions of worth of the most sophisticated weaponry to its adversaries, namely Tel Aviv, Riyadh, and Abu Dhabi? I mean, billions and billions of the most sophisticated weaponry, and they get to flex their muscles in the Middle East while Iran has to sit idly by. And Iran said time and again, whatever we do to arm ourselves is strictly for deterrent purposes, and we're never going to be on the offensive with any of our neighbors.
I think it's very clear from the very much the substance of what you said that all of the neighbors of Iran who are very much hostile to them and are cooperating with the U.S., Saudi, Israeli imperialist actions throughout the region are definitely building up arms, and those arms would be aimed directly at anyone who essentially opposed U.S. imperialism. That would be Iran, Syria, Lebanon, etc. But these particular three countries. So definitely the U.S. is trying to place these three countries in a further disadvantaged situation by hindering their ability to have any kind of defense against invasion. As we saw, this is exactly what happened with Syria. Proxy forces were sent into the country, and now Syria is doing much better with the cooperation of Russia in this regard. And I think that's what Iran wants to avoid, having to depend on its neighbor. Every country has the right to defend itself. And that's what the United States is doing here, is undermining the ability of the Iranian people to defend themselves from any potential attacks from the three aforementioned countries. I mean, it's a basic democratic and human rights principle for self-defense to anyone to defend themselves from being attacked. But that's what's very specifically being hindered here by the United States with the goal of pushing potentially a regime change strategy. Well, there is a regime change strategy going on, but any potential military application of that strategy.
All right, thanks, bud. Stay safe, and we will talk soon. Joining us from Ontario, Mr. Jason Unruhe, political commentator.